Hey, Pastor Josh here. We're reading Acts chapter 7, verses 32 through, it's 23 through 26. And this one's a tough one today because sometimes our motives are right, but our actions are wrong. Our motives are right. You have a good heart. You have a good reason for doing whatever you're doing. But the actions and even the timing of your actions are absolutely 100% wrong. And here's the bad thing, is that is still sin. And it's a tricky sin because your heart is actually good. You want the right end. You want even God's glory. You want good things, but you're doing it in the wrong way, or perhaps you're even doing it at the wrong time. So here's another element too. Sometimes we do the right thing at the wrong time. Timing has a big deal to do with obeying God as well. But particularly, we're going to look at when our motives are right, but our actions are wrong in the story. The historical lesson that's given to us in Stephen's sermon is the one about Moses, when he had the right motivation, but his action was absolutely wrong. Remember, we're walking through Stephen's sermon. We'll be doing that through the rest of this month. Encourage you to go back to the beginning of chapter 7 to get the entire sermon and get the entire context of where we're at. But Stephen has given us a biblical, theological approach to the Old Testament, and we are now in the story of Moses. So when he, this is Moses, was 40 years old, it came into his heart to visit his brothers, the children of Israel. Remember, they were slaves in Egypt. They were in captivity. I also want you to notice that Moses was 40 years old. God sometimes calls people in the second leg of their life, in the second half of their life, and it's a wonderful, wonderful, good thing. 40 years old, that is when Moses was officially called into the ministry. Or at least that's when it began to work in his heart. We know that even his initial call into the ministry, the internal workings that he wanted to serve the people of Israel, that wouldn't even come to pass for another 40 years till he actually led the Israelites out of Egypt. So I want to encourage you, is God calling you to a higher calling? A higher calling being into the ministry. Not that what you're doing now is a lower calling. In fact, all members of our church, everybody that serves in any way, shape, or form is valuable to the Lord. But perhaps you find yourself in a phase of life where you can do more. Perhaps you're in retirement. Perhaps you're looking through and switching careers. Perhaps the kids have left the house. So you're in that latter half of your life, and you're like, well, what do I do now? Well, Moses was called a little later in life, and I think we all can say Moses was mightily used of God, and God can mightily use you as well. So notice he's 40 years old. He does make a mistake. He makes a big mistake that we'll point out here in a minute because he has the right motivations, the right calling, but the wrong actions. In verse 24, here's what he does. And seeing one of them, his fellow Israelites, seeing one of them being wronged, he defended the oppressed man and avenged him by striking down the Egyptian. Moses actually killed the Egyptian and then buried him and tried to hide it. Again, his motives was right. What was he doing? He was trying to take justice. He was trying to save the people of Israel, which is what he was called to do. Yes, he's doing it wrong right now, but the inner call in his heart is what's happening right now. He sees them wronged, and he goes and he kills the Egyptian. He had the right motive, but the absolute wrong action. Now, Moses had not yet received the Ten Commandments, but he's going to receive that one day, and that sixth commandment is going to be, thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not murder is the command. And there he goes, doing it. Verse 25. He supposed that his brothers would understand that God was giving them salvation by his hand. Again, this call on Moses' life was early on. He went into the desert. It was 40 years later before Moses ever came back and began to have this encounter with Pharaoh and the plagues and all the such when they go and cross over the Red Sea. But this internal call in his heart was correct at the age of 40. He was just doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. So Moses did a double sin, right? He had the right motive, but he did the wrong thing at the wrong time. He killed an Egyptian, terribly wrong. And he supposed that his brothers would understand that God was giving them salvation by his hand. What are you doing wrong? What action are you doing wrong? You've got the right motive. You want God's glory. You want the benefit for other people, but you're doing it in the wrong way and at the wrong time. And notice they did not understand. And on the following day, he appeared to them as they were quarreling and tried to reconcile them, saying, "Men, you're brothers. Why do you wrong each other?" So he's attempting to be a judge, which he would be later on. He would be the one to judge and be the great lawgiver. And so he is here saying, hey, here guys, what are you doing wrong? And we'll see what their response is on the next time, or in tomorrow's reading. But we see that they do not understand that God was giving them salvation by his hand. Moses was doing the right, or had the right motive, but he was doing the wrong action at the wrong time. I pray that has been a blessing to you. I'll see you in the next video.